Welcome back to The Line. Does New Mexico have too many public institutions of higher learning? Former governor and New Mexico State University Chancellor Gary Carruthers, he thinks so. He wouldn't be alone. Mr. Carruthers spoke during an economic forum in Albuquerque last week and posed the idea that the state should re-examine the public higher education system, which soaks up 13% of the state's general fund budget and has also been hit hard during these budget cuts. Now, according to the Albuquerque Journal, there are 31 public higher ed institutions across New Mexico, Tom. And we've spoken at length at this table about it, but you were there at the forum where Mr. Carruthers spoke. Was that a surprise to the room? Did people generally have agreement with him, or were folks kind of surprised to hear the chancellor say such a thing?
There was a lot of nodding heads, and because of an engaged audience.
Right.
You know, he addresses the forum about once a year, and he always brings the same kind of message, just a different twist on it. And you know, with all the attention that higher education's received over the many months. Especially with the Martinez administration making the moves that they did, everybody was a little bit more heightened as far as what was going to be said. So when he talked about the restrictions that keep the 31 at 31 as far as the colleges and universities, that really resonated, because what you have in the room are a lot of folks who are used to being able to manage their budgets appropriately. And if you have a university that has community college partnerships and many different campuses, and you need an act of the legislature to go ahead and remove that, that takes a lot of play out of your game, so to speak. That's right. So the Economic Forum membership were very interested, but they're interested in what the results are. So what they really connected, though, was his management style, as far as talking about the number of direct reports that his folks had, and really minimizing that, and really streamlining management. I think it's a good short-term solution for other universities and colleges to take a look at. But I think the walkaway was, that's just not going to be enough. You need to have the whole system really turned over again.
Right. Interestingly, Vicki, if I have the numbers right, Mr. Carruthers and others at State, they laid off an unbelievable amount of people.
700 and something from NMSU.
That's a lot. That's a lot of budget cutting right there. That's incredible. And so there's not much more, I'm going to take a guess here, that one can cut. And so this idea of too many colleges, of course, had to come to the fore at some point once you hit bottom on cuts. But in your view, is it in fact a problem of too many schools? Are we just not creating enough college-ready students? Is it a combination of both?
Well, that's the thing that I question, because of our graduation rates from high school, which still shock me to this day. And, when you look at it, I mean, the numbers were around 155,000 students enrolled, and you divide that by 31, and you're looking at a little over 4,000 per school.
Right.
That does seem excessive. But I would want to know more about it. I mean, are these, as Tom just said, are these partnerships with community colleges, and these are just different branches, which I think is a great thing for a rural state like us. Sure. I know people who've used the campuses all over the state from UNM. That's right. Although I do have a little beef with the UNM interim president and this idea of just combining all the big schools into one.
Meaning State,
yes,
UNM, and also New Mexico Tech.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
that's interesting.
I don't know. I mean, what's going to happen to our rivalry with NMSU at that point? I mean, I'm a Lobo, people. I want to stay a Lobo.
No small deal. That's right.
I mean, I grew up in Memphis, and they took Memphis State and turned it into University of Memphis. Right. So now we just call it Tiger High. So, I mean, I just think that when you're looking at 4,000 students per campus, we really need a lot more details, because there's a big difference between some of our smaller community colleges and CNM or UNM, for example.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can think of the satellite campus at Valencia County for UNM. It's a huge hit. I mean, people love that campus down there. They've had all kinds of great success with it. In Taos, grants, I mean, all kinds of different places. But again, Laura, these places are also economic drivers for some of these communities as well. And the idea to just eliminate a school whole cloth, that's a big decision.
Right, and not an easy one. I think in theory it's something to talk about, and certainly to look at in terms of the, where the excess might be and where you might be able to cut. It is astonishing that they cut 700 positions. I wonder, where did those people go? Yeah. Because I can't imagine that a community like Las Cruces could just reabsorb them in some other area. Right. So what happened to them would be an interesting kind of follow-up. But for a lot of these smaller communities, the local university, the branch, whatever it is that you're doing is huge. I mean, if I look at New Mexico Highlands University, University, which, in full disclosure, is one of our clients at our firm. I work with them very closely. They're such an important part of that community. It's very easy to say, yeah, we should be combining them or whatever, but they have their own distinct, football program, their own distinct, higher education in terms of educating teachers. It's a huge program. They do a lot of social work, training. So each school has its own specific identity, and so to combine them just seems like something unnatural to me.
Right.
But also, it's legally, I'm not sure that you can do it because there's some of these schools are created by the Constitution. They're actually constitutionally named higher education institutions, and you can't just get rid of them, given that they're part of the Constitution. You'd have to have some kind of, legally, you'd have to have some kind of referendum to amend the Constitution to get rid of some of these schools. I just don't think that's happening. But I do think that one of the big problems we face here, higher education is its own economic driver, as you said. It creates jobs for people in certain communities just by being part of the university. But then when you graduate students, where are those students going? There aren't the jobs here in New Mexico, so many of them are leaving the state.
That's right.
Using their education elsewhere.
That's right.
And that kind of brain drain is something we have to address.
Absolutely. Pick up on the constitutionality of getting rid of a school. I hate to use those terms, but you know what I mean. That's a heck of a political fight that Laura's describing. That would be, I couldn't imagine a local legislator going, okay, I'm for that. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen.
Right. Good luck with that.
Right?
Well, it's interesting. So this is a debate we've had for a long time. I mean, when I was in the legislature, we talked about this. And actually, the numbers tell us that we do have too many colleges. So we have, per capita, we have 27% more colleges than Colorado, 40% more than Arizona, and we have a 15% reduction in student population in the last 6 years. And as Governor Carruthers mentioned in his talk, higher ed suffered a 44% budget cut over the last several years. So the legislature is not going to make any changes. I mean, you're right, but the marketplace might, and that's one of the things that's happening right now. So universities, colleges get less money from the state government. They have to look at tuition increases, grants, foundations, that kind of thing. But we have to address a backdrop of why, too.
Okay.
So, high school graduation rates, that's one. But, iconic new economic developer Mark Lautman in his book, Why Boomers Bail, said, a bigger problem than Islamic fascism and global warming is the fact that boomers didn't have kids and millennials aren't having kids.
That's right.
So that's one of the backdrops, and then people are leaving the state as well. So we have a net, even growth rate in a region that's growing. So, I mean, those issues need to be addressed as well. But the good news is the universities are reorganizing. I kind of like the idea, despite the fact we wouldn't have the Aggie Lobo thing going on. I like the idea of becoming more competitive nationally. Right. Because you bring the tech skills of tech into the mix, and some of the benefits of what's happening down at NMSU together
All the ag
with UNM.
stuff.
Sure.
And then our community colleges are doing a great job. I know the nursing program at UNM. You compare nursing at UNM versus CNM. A lot of nursing students would rather be at CNM. So I think the marketplace is going to make the decision, but don't look to the legislature to do it.
I want to stay with you for a quick second, something you brought to our attention in our little confab on Monday to get ready for the show. That's the idea of tech transfer out of UNM. And what's not happening versus what's happening, meaning we're doing a great job developing companies that are coming out of the university and going out there, but we're losing 8 out of the 12 that we spun out have gone out of state, and we're having a problem. And you were recently in Silicon Valley, and I'd love to get your perspective on what you think is going on here, because this has long-term ramifications for us here.
Right. Well, honestly, I think we need to manage our expectations.
Okay.
And keep in mind, we have a population of 2 million in New Mexico. I mean, who's our competition? You look, at the Research Triangle in North Carolina, there's 3 universities, there's 3 million people in that metro area.
Right.
You look at the Silicon Valley, my goodness, you've got Stanford out there, you've got Berkeley, you've got, a hub of millions and millions of people. We're taking the right steps. So if you look at the question of, what gave birth to the Silicon Valley? So you had Hewlett and Packard moving out of Stanford, bringing their idea into the private sector, check. We have commercialization that's occurring from Sandia. from the universities into the private sector. We have public-private partnerships. We've put that piece together, so we've taken that step forward. We have incubation networks. We've taken that piece and moved it forward as well. You know, what we're lacking is funding, and it took decades for that funding piece to rise in Silicon Valley. I mean, there's a whole street on Sawmill Avenue in Palo Alto. You drive down, it's all venture capital firms.
That's right.
So we're taking the right steps. And actually, innovation's not just going to come out of Sandia and the university.
That's right.
You know, the science fairs that Sandia Labs puts on with high school students. I mean, it's amazing.
It's
the
getting there.
things that these high
It's getting
school
there.
students-
Exactly
yeah.
right. There was agreement, Tom, on this, however, that what Mark just mentioned is that next critical step, and that's getting that venture funding once you're out there and ready for the world. We just don't have the amount of funding out there. This has been a tough slog for about 10 or 15 years. It's not a new argument at all. How much should the state be putting in, meaning picking favorites? That gets a little tricky right there. You know what I mean? Talk on that if you would.
It really does. You know, when you look at the available funding, I mean, you know, to us, you know, to the normal person, you look at the type of funding that, you know, the tech transfer is receiving, you go, wow, that's a lot of money.
Right.
But in the big scope of things, it's barely dropping a pebble into the water.
That's right.
I think that, you know, the solution is just to focus on one or two.
Okay.
And really be
Categories
excellent at
or
those.
businesses?
Yeah,
Okay.
categories
Yeah.
or verticals,
Sure.
you know, things of that nature. You know, the larger issue at play is you know, where's the workforce that's going to be to support all of this?
That's right.
And that's one of the reasons why a lot of these companies decide to pick up and leave.
That's right.
You know, Facebook announced that they're doubling the size of their you know, data center. That's great. Well, you know, there were going to be, you know, 500 workers that would be needed. Now there's going to be 1,000 workers that are needed.
That's right.
And where on earth are those workers going to come from? Granted, it's, you know, separate from the high tech discussion, but you know, workforce is really one of these things that needs to be addressed, because we can grow and nurture all the great companies in the world, but if we don't have the venture capital that's here and that's growing slowly, and we don't have the workforce, yeah, they are going to go to places like, you know, Silicon Valley and Boulder and Austin, where they have a workforce and plentiful money.
And there's other things, Vic, that come with that. You know, you lose the chance to have local people become management people and work up through the ranks, and then they become owners at some point, because when you pick up and move, a lot of times there's serious management changes that come with the venture capital money. It's not just free dough, it comes with consequences. So touch on a little bit, you know, it's complicated, as Tom just mentioned. How do we get this turned around so people stay here right after they've hatched, so to speak?
Well, for me, not knowing anything at all really about this, what UNM does and all of this, I mean, I would say, you know, if we're going to train you and give you all these resources and help you come up with this fabulous idea, then you need to hang out a little bit. I mean, you can stay in New Mexico and raise money elsewhere. And if we're always, I mean, we've been talking about not having the workforce for years. Well, we're never going to have the workforce if everybody leaves. We have to invest in our state. And I think it goes back to some really mundane, boring things to make our economy better. I mean, we've got to, I mean, I feel like Janice Arnold Jones, we've got to reform our tax code.
That's right.
You know, we've got, it's a problem when the big box stores don't pay gross receipts taxes, but BIOS does. I mean, it just, there's so many issues that don't make any sense from someone who is not a tech person and who has not worked in venture capitalism.
That's fair enough, because on its
you
face,
just
you know,
think on
that's
your
right.
face, you're like,
That's
okay,
right.
so we spent all this time and resources on 12 new ideas and 8 of them left us.
Right.
Okay, well, let's quit spending all of our time and resources on somebody who's going to leave.
That's right. Is that sound viable, Laura? I mean, that's a discussion that's been going on in tech circles. How does one incentivize one to stay, you know, meaning punitive type things, or is there just a better way to do this that allows people just to stay and do their thing here?
Well, I think first and foremost, there needs to be a review of why those people left. I mean, we don't know right now. We're speculating.
Right.
And hopefully somebody is doing some follow-up, and if not, I think that's a prime area for a little bit of research, some surveys, to try to figure out why did those 8 companies leave? What was it about New Mexico that wasn't attractive to them?
That's
Or
right.
maybe we can start to see some patterns about what we could address. I think without that knowledge, we're really just shooting in the dark.
Is it part of the previous discussion we just had about being over-colleged, so to speak? What if we did go to a scheme where state and tech and UNM were all kind of together? Would that solve part of this problem we're seeing with
I don't think
companies
that
leaving?
in and of itself will solve it. I mean, I think you really need to look specifically at why these companies, if we're seeing a pattern of companies, you know, starting out here using technology that grew up sort of, you know, was born in New Mexico, why are they then seeing it seeing benefits moving elsewhere, especially in a culture now where we're able to work from anywhere.
That's right.
In a lot of situations.
That's right.
You can, live in New Mexico and raise money elsewhere. You can telecommute to anywhere. So why was it more attractive for people to leave?
That's right.
And we may see, just a variety of factors that were personal in nature, but maybe there are some patterns that we can address.
Good point there. That's all the time we have with that one. When we come back to the line, we'll talk about a controversial ordinance being proposed in the village of Corrales.